Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for attending the Next Steps and Report Out webinar. My name is Aisha, and I am the Open Education Project Manager at Spark, and I'm also a steering committee member for the Open Education Association Development Project. So if this is your first time joining one of our conversations, or if you have been in previous conversations, we welcome you. We're really excited to have you all here. Love to see all these different states being represented. So I'm based in Maryland, about 30 minutes outside of the capital. And I am here today to share a little bit about the Open Education Association Development Project, what we have been up to, and where we have been going. So for those who are completely new to us, I am going to start with just providing a little bit of background information. So the Open Education Association Development Project launched at the beginning of this year with a mission to really shape a future where educational resources and practices are openly shared and reflect the needs of learners. So, the goal of this work is to increase the visibility of open education, bridge gaps between existing efforts, and foster connections for greater collective impact. Now, this work is led by a steering committee. We have almost all of our members here today, and it is comprised of 6 community members and for members who represent Doers, Spark, and the regional compacts. And I will discuss the background in a bit, which will explain a little bit of that composition. But before we get into that, I do want to share a little bit about the agenda that we have set today. So we are going to first, like I said, go through the background and then walk you through our needs assessment survey results. We did a survey earlier this year to really understand the needs of the community. And then we've also been doing some internal field mapping, which we want to walk you all through, and then share next steps and programming we have. And then we will end with questions from you all. So yeah, starting off, we have our background. So this work began last year with Doers, Spark, and the Regional Higher Education Compacts. There are 4 of them. There's MEC, NEBI, SREB, and WICHE, which cover the Midwestern region, the Northeastern region, the Southern region, and then the Western region. So this group initiated a series of conversations with the open education community to explore what a national open education strategy might look like. These conversations recognize that open education has come a long way in specifically the United States and as well as around the world, yet there are many opportunities and challenges that could be addressed through greater national coordination and collaborative action. So this includes the need to enhance recognition for open education, to expand advocacy efforts, and facilitate more pathways to secure funding for open education efforts. So this group ultimately decided to apply for a grant from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, which has brought together the Open Education Association Development Project that is here today. It is a 2-year grant that is administered by Spark under the steering committee's oversight. And one of the main roles of the steering committee is to ensure that the initiative stays true to its guiding principles that were consulted through the community discussions last year. And our guiding principles, next slide, are to engage transparently and openly with the community, to consider the diverse context of states and regions, understanding that we are a big country, each state has very unique contexts, to collaborate with and respect the agency of existing organizations and communities. There are a lot of great organizations, networks, communities out there currently in the field, and we seek to collaborate with them and respect the work that they do. The next one is avoid duplication of efforts, focusing on activities that fill gaps and catalyze opportunities. And then the last one is center inclusive practices while also acknowledging the inequities in the systems that we navigate. So this work is also guided by a framework, which was developed alongside the community last year, and the framework includes a vision, a purpose, and strategic objectives. So the vision for this work is a future where educational resources and practices in U.S. higher education and beyond are openly shared and reflective of the learners they serve. And then we're also driven by our purpose, which is to facilitate strategic coordination within the open education field to bring people together to fill gaps and do more to support learners. So, as we shared with you this spring, the first priority of the development project was to conduct a needs assessment survey and gap analysis. So, a good chunk of this webinar today will be sharing the results of the survey findings and where the future of this project is heading, and then some initial programming to look out for. And then lastly, we will end with any questions as well as comments that you may have regarding this work, and then ways you can get directly involved in some of this work. So I will now pass it over to Nicole to introduce herself and then walk through our needs assessment survey results.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Aisha. Hello, everybody. I'm Nicole Allen, Director of Open Education at Spark, and also the lead on the Hewlett Grant. And I will be covering the first section of our webinar today, which is focused on reporting back on the results of the needs assessment survey. And as Aisha said, this was the first main priority that the project embarked upon, recognizing that before we began building anything new, it was important to really take time to understand what are the needs of the field and take a more quantitative approach to understanding where the work of this project could be most impactful. So the survey was conducted in March through April of this year. We want to thank all of you who participated by either taking the survey or sharing it with your communities. It was developed and administered by Bayview Analytics as our partner, funded by the Hewlett Foundation, and was closely overseen and developed with the steering committee. Specifically, Daniel Williamson from OpenStax is a big part of shaping this. He unfortunately cannot be here with us today, so I will try to do justice in terms of describing the methodology. So the approach that we took with the survey was a little bit different than some of the other surveys that are done either through Bayview Analytics or out there in the field, where we really designed it using a market research framework. So to understand that this is a field that is widespread, it's been around for a long time, there are many different parts, and we want to understand what members of the field are trying to get done. Like, what work are they actually trying to do related to open education, and where do and don't they have the support they need in order to do that, so that we can assess where are the gaps, where are the opportunities, where can this work fit in. Overall, the survey received about 1,300 responses spanning all 50 states. And those responses are broken into two samples. First, a sample of about 1,000 results that were collected organically through community channels, and a representative national panel of faculty that Bayview Analytics reached out to outside of community channels of about 300. And the purpose of that was just to sort of check our results to make sure that there was nothing sort of in how or our organic outreach that may have biased the results. And for the purposes of this presentation, we're only going to be showing the results from the organic sample, because at a high level, the national faculty panel sort of validated the main conclusions and trends that we found in the organic sample. All right, so next, I'm just going to run through a couple of slides that give you a sense of the people who took the survey. In terms of geographic distribution, we were pretty much widely distributed across the US, across all different regions. And next, in terms of the professions and years engaged, about half of the people who took this survey through the organic results were faculty, with another about third as librarians or library professionals, and then some administrators, instructional design, or other. I should note that the profession graph on the left reflects only those who said they worked at post-secondary institutions, which was about 90% of the results. There was another 10% of results where we didn't ask this question, that comprised people working in governments, nonprofits, and also a few who are working in K-12. And then in terms of how long people have been engaged in the field, there's about half of the people have been engaged for more than 5 years, and about half have been engaged for less than 5 years. All right. We asked a couple of other questions just to understand a little bit about the people who were taking the survey. We asked people what the primary goal of their open education work was and asked people to sort of pick one from this list. I think many people would say everything from this list, but this is where things landed. About half of the respondents said that their primary goal was really around increasing affordability and saving students money, with others engaged in other primary goals, including student success, expanding access to knowledge, agency and freedom in the classroom, culturally responsive education, and institutional sustainability. And then the last just quick background piece is that we asked people what types of open education activities people were engaged in. And this is just a sense of where things fell. About half said, and people could select up to 3. So a lot of people, excuse me, were engaged in multiple of these. So supporting faculty in OER adoption was a little over half. Teaching courses using OER, open pedagogy, is a little bit under half. And then lots of engagement in things like advocacy, developing OER, managing initiatives, and most of the others fell, broadly within these categories. Okay, so moving on to the sort of heart of the survey, the needs analysis portion of this. So as I said before, this was designed from a marketing research standpoint, where we're really interested in, like, what is the actual work that the people are trying to get done related to open education, and can we assess to what extent they have what they need in order to do that. And based on a series of one-on-one interviews we conducted to surface needs, and then also just the over a year of rich data from the various webinars and conversations we've had in the past, we focused the survey in on 9 activities related to open education, which I'll show in a minute. And in the survey, participants were asked to rate each activity according to 2 factors. 1, its importance to their open education work, and 2, their level of satisfaction with the current support available for that activity to them personally. And we use those 2 dimensions to calculate what is called an opportunity score for each activity. The activities are things like finding OER or publishing OER. And that opportunity score gives us a sense of where in the field people are underserved, in the sense that they're high importance activities that are rated low in satisfaction. So it's important things people need to do, but they don't really have what they need to do it, versus overserved areas where things are rated either low importance or higher importance, but also high satisfaction in the sense that people have what they need. And then we also asked, some additional follow-up questions that provided additional cover and color and other demographic and benchmark questions, which we'll look at just a bit at the end. All right, so on the next slide, we have the 9 activities we asked about. And on this slide, they are ranked in order of importance. And this is overall among the entire organic sample of community members. The order of these did shift a little bit across different professions, but broadly the trends were pretty much the same kind of stuff was at the top and the bottom. And at the top, the 2 that really stuck out and having above 70% rating it of either 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5 in terms of importance are being able to efficiently find OER and being able to access tools and resources that support open education work. Not a surprise to see these at the top of the list. And then in the middle, between the 50 to 60% category of people saying, rating this is important to them, and the 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5 boxes are things like staying up to date about open education, responding to political and technological changes affecting their work, accessing professional development opportunities, securing funding, adapting and publishing OER, and networking and collaborating. And then an interesting dimension of this survey is that recognition was actually an outlier in the sense that it was rated incredibly low on the importance scale. And we'll talk about this in a little bit, but it really was the only one that stuck out is clearly not important, which was interesting because some of the more quantitative results that we found that Gabby will talk about in a bit were a little bit in contrast to that. All right, so next slide, we have the ranking of jobs, these, quote, jobs to be done or activities by satisfaction, and also the most desired type of support and the follow-up questions for each of these items. And I should note that there's a lot of information in these slides and sort of even more in the results of the survey. And we will be sharing the slides after this presentation, as well as posting the survey instrument and data tables on the website so that people have a chance to sort of dig in on any details you would like to dig in on. So here we have the list of activities ranked by the satisfaction level. And again, it's those top two boxes which represented somewhat or very satisfied. And most of the activities actually rated pretty high in terms of satisfaction, with 50 to 60% saying that they were satisfied with the kind of support that's available to do those things. And then at the very bottom, it's very interestingly, recognition shows up here. Even though about 20% of people said it was important, which was low, the ones who did say it was important identified it as an area that was just very unsatisfactory in terms of the support they were getting for it. And then, unsurprisingly, funding and then responding to political and technological changes were at the bottom of this in terms of satisfaction, and I'm likely not a surprise to anybody. Okay, and when we put all of this together, so this is a data table, we used the importance score and satisfaction score to calculate that opportunity score. And here, a high opportunity score means essentially that it is higher in importance and lower in satisfaction. And a good way to think about this is that the opportunity score is essentially just a need score, things that are very important, but people aren't fully satisfied with what's out there to support them. And then in contrast, a lower opportunity score is one that is lower importance and or lower satisfaction, where people either have what they need or it's just not very important to them. So when we put this together on sort of a graph, which is on the next slide, we can visually get a sense of where this maps across of the two dimensions of satisfaction and importance, where the top left corner is overserved, meaning that people are highly satisfied by what is out there. People have, all of their needs met, and there isn't anything else that needs to be done. And then underserved in the sense that the really important stuff just doesn't have the support that people need. And as you can see, all of these aspects, all of these aspects sort of fall into this middle area where, there's no area where people are, everybody's needs are being met, but there are also no areas that really fall in the far underserved corner either. And I think this is a really promising look at the field, and it's a sign of a healthy field that is, clearly understands its needs, it's engaging in activities to meet those needs. And of course, there always isn't going to be everything everybody needs, but we've come a long way. So I think that's the high level takeaway here, and I think that's really great. But as you saw from the little circle, there definitely are some areas where there is a need to provide additional support, and we've narrowed it down to this set of 4 activities to really focus in on some of the work we're doing with this project. And those areas are helping people find OER, access tools and resources, get access to funding for open education work, and respond to the political and technological changes that are impacting their work, whatever those changes may be. All right. Before I move on, I just want to touch on a couple of other questions that we asked that provide a little bit more dimension and understanding of that. So on the next slide, we asked people just some general questions about the current state of the field. One of the questions we asked is, how confident are you that you know where to turn for support or information about open education? And similar to the story that I think the previous graph told, most people are confident that they know where to turn. 84% have at least moderate or 3 out of 5 rating confidence that they know where to turn for support. And the largest group in here is that 4 out of 5 rating, where about 40% of people say that. So I think that's really heartening and shows that the field has come a long way and offers a lot of great support. And if we break this down by profession, the same patterns hold broadly across the different professions. You can see that faculty are perhaps a little bit less confident than, for example, librarians, but the same pattern in terms of that 4 out of 5 rating being the most common one in terms of confidence it pretty much holds across these groups. And then if we break it down by another dimension, which is the type of network people are involved in, we ask people to let us know what types of open education networks or programs they're involved in. And this table breaks down their confidence about knowing where to turn by the highest level of network they're involved in. So national, state, institution, or no network. And again, it shows that the people who are involved in networks tend to know where to turn. And then it also shows that there's this whole group of people who are not currently in networks, who tend to be less confident about where to turn, and it's almost like a mirror opposite result. And I think that's really telling too, because there are clearly many individuals that are sort of organically reached by this survey, filtering through, however it was disseminated, who, don't identify as part of current networks, but are engaging in this work and perhaps don't always know exactly where to turn. So there is still some work to do there. Okay, the final graph I want to show you is just the other 2 questions we asked to sort of get a sense of the national state of the field. And these 2 graphs look very similar because the results are almost identical to both of them. And the 2 questions we asked people was just the overall extent to which they feel the open education field is well coordinated nationally, and the extent that the open education is recognized as a field nationally. And in both cases, the highest rating, 5 out of 5, was about 2%. And the majority of people who answered this question said sort of a 1 or 2 out of 5. And it's interesting because, again, this is like mirror opposite to what people say in terms of their confidence about knowing where to turn. So there's lots of stuff happening at the grassroots level, the network level, but perhaps there just like isn't that national piece of it. And I think that really validates the premise of some of this work and helps inform the next steps. So just to wrap up my section, to run through some takeaways, first, I think the story that these data show is that the open education field offers substantial support that broadly addresses the most important needs. People know where to turn for help, and there are no like really drastically over underserved areas. That said, there are clear areas where support can be improved, and there's a lot of room to grow, especially at the national level. And particularly in those 4 areas that we've identified to focus on, and engaging in work to increase coordination and recognition nationally can benefit the whole to be more cohesive. I think also worth noting, there are people outside of the existing networks that don't necessarily know where to turn that could be served by the work that we're doing. So I'm going to stop there and turn it over to Gabby, who has engaged in the sort of second piece of the research that we did to map the field and understand where the gaps are and how this work can fit in. So I'll turn it over to you, Gabby.
Thank you, Nicole. Next slide. So as we began exploring what might be possible for an Open Education Association development project, we knew it was really critical to start by learning from those who are already doing the work. And just as we saw in the data presented by Nicole, this field offers substantial support to the community. So we initiated a series of conversations with over 20 open education organizations. And these organizations have a unique vantage point because they're not just participants, but pillars in the field, designing programming and convening communities, building resources and such. And we wanted to know with these organizations, like what's working, what's missing, and what national level support could possibly be useful to the field. And across these conversations, a clear pattern emerged. We heard a repeated desire for a structure that could strengthen coordination, support alignment, and also help organizations build on one another's efforts to increase the collective impact. Many organizations expressed a sense of shared momentum and enthusiasm paired with recognition that improved connection could make collaboration more effective and sustainable. So there's a growing desire to better understand who's doing what and how we can more easily stay informed and work in complement with one another. Next slide. And the takeaway was really clear. The field is growing, and with that growth comes just the natural need for more connection and intentional coordination. There really was genuine interest in exploring what a national effort could look like, and especially one that brings people and organizations together and helps align efforts and strengthens the field as a whole. But there was also a shared understanding that any new initiative must enhance, not overshadow, the work already in motion. It should really act as a connector, supporting collaboration while respecting the diversity and an independence of existing efforts, which is very similar to some of the last data that we saw from Nicole of those slides of where to move forward. So several specific needs came up multiple times across many of the conversations. A new structure, if a new structure is built, it must be built with trust and transparency at its core, with roles that contribute to a cohesive field and minimize overlap. Also interest of governance that reflects the field's diversity and encourage shared ownership. Another need came up, which there should also be better communication pathways. So organizations can stay informed and connected, just as we see better communication pathways needed and wanted at the practitioner level as well. And stronger systems for sharing resources could benefit the overall field, as well as strategic clarity, so everyone can better understand how their work fits into the larger picture. So these were topics that came up over and over again with all of these conversations. So we really felt that it made it clear that before building anything new, we first need to understand the landscape more deeply. We wanted to ensure that any new initiative would enhance work already in motion, acting as that kind of supporting connector and respecting the diversity and independence of existing efforts within the field. And so that's kind of what led us to begin the field mapping work as well. So we could see the scope of activity and the players involved and the potential pathways for stronger connection and support. So with the field mapping efforts, the goal of this work that I've been leading over the past several months is to really try to capture a clearer picture of the open education ecosystem, kind of who's involved, what's happening, and where support exists. So understanding sometimes beyond just the sliver of our state or our institution or our practitioner groups that we're involved in, really seeing the national landscape and ecosystem. This work has been deliberate and detailed and at times very time intensive. It's involved combing through fragmented sources of information. Sometimes it isn't centralized, and trying to organize it in a way that helps the work of the entire community be more seen and as well as documented. This we see as essential work because without a clear map, we can't see the full picture of the field nor plan where we can go in the future. So as you can see on this slide, we've uncovered some of the things we've uncovered in a very short amount of time. And I believe it paints a very powerful picture. So as you may have seen, we have found so far, at the very least, 42 open education conferences that are dedicated to or significantly featuring open education as their main topic. And they each offer a unique space for collaboration and exchange within the community. Since May 12th, we have started tracking kind of webinars, shared practical knowledge, tools, and stories of impact across roles and region within open education. And so far, we have found 81. We have found at the very least 40 opportunities since May 25th, which include open applications and proposals or job opportunities in the open education field, or even calls for participation or nominations for awards and things of that nature that have circulated just in the last 2 months. And I also like to recognize that this is also kind of the off period, the summertime. So this is a lot of opportunities that we have found in just a very short amount of time. There are also, at the very least, 28 statewide support initiatives beyond like systems. So we're talking entire state level support that demonstrate open education really isn't isolated. It's deeply embedded across higher education systems. And well over 150 entities, which include organizations, networks, consortia, and projects that are actively focused on or supporting open education work. And so out of these conferences, webinars, opportunities, and statewide initiatives, those are some of the entities that we're tracking to notice who is doing what and where and how it's impacting the field. We're also looking at external activities as well, or adjacent entities, but that's some future work that we hope to do and really start to broaden the field outside of what's currently happening. Next slide. So individually, these numbers are impressive, but together they signal something more important, and that this is a field with energy, structure, and momentum. Just as it was reflected in the survey, this is a vibrant and growing ecosystem where an extraordinary amount of work is already happening, but much of it may have been untracked or unconnected. So by mapping this landscape, we are really trying to ensure that we surface the infrastructure that supports the open education field. We're identifying who's producing resources, hosting conferences, creating these opportunities for engagement, and beginning to see where duplication may exist, gaps remain, and where community labor could be supported. So up until a few months ago, I was an open education practitioner myself. I knew the field was big, but once I had the opportunity to really dedicate my time to looking into what the field has to offer, I'm finding so much more than I could have imagined. There's so many things I wish I would have known about all of these products and things, and they would have absolutely helped me grow my program and also helped me make deeper connections with the field and other practitioners. So some examples of what we've uncovered, I have found 34 so far OER 101 professional development opportunities. And while it's absolutely wonderful for there to be so many choices and pathways to learn about open education, this field mapping exercise is showcasing areas where maybe we can utilize open principles to create a more robust and varied bank of professional development pathways for continued engagement. So we're really seeing what's out there, where our gaps are, and where we can move to the future. And field mapping and tracking can also actively reduce the burden on individual practitioners to track everything themselves if they don't have the current capacity to do so. Some of you may have seen, we've already started to hear from people about adding the Open Education webinar calendar, opportunity board, and Open Education conference list to their website or newsletter, so they're not having to track those independently. So while the initial stages of the field mapping process have created some lists like we've talked about, a need that surfaced in the survey data is that this map spans far beyond just a list building exercise. It's a reflection of how far we've come and a signal that the field is ready for something more coordinated, visible, and sustainable. The field map is a way for us to eventually show others, from funders to policymakers, that open education is coordinated, active, and worth investing in. And later on in the webinar, you'll find ways to engage and learn more about this initiative, specifically with field mapping, if it's of interest to you. But for now, I'll go ahead and pass it to Aisha to dive into how we use this information to guide our next steps.
Thank you so much, Gabby. And thank you so much, Nicole, for providing that background. Really, really appreciate it. And it helps sets the stage for the next part of this conversation. So taking into consideration all of the conversations we have had and the research we collected, the steering committee has been carefully considering the best path forward to support the needs of the field while simultaneously meeting the needs of the strategic objectives that the community has identified throughout this process. So we are about a quarter way through the 2-year grant provided by the Hewlett Foundation for this work, and the world looks a lot differently than when we first applied for it back in September of 2024. So originally, when we chose the name Open Education Association Development Project, we envisioned the efforts of this project to focus more on programming first, with the development of a formal association happening over a longer period of time. But what we have seen that from the takeaway from our research and the outreach that we've done is that to tackle the kind of gaps and needs we see, we need the association now. And one with members to represent and engage in work, as well as to provide a platform for a national voice, given all the forces that we are currently up against and some states have been up against for a long time. So with the moment that we are in, we have decided to just move forward full steam ahead with forming the association, and we're looking to begin even signing up members as early as this fall. So this would be the Open Education Association, and it would be an individual membership professional association. So with this work becoming an association, we noticed there were 3 key themes that really emerged that is vital for this association to be able to do so. So the first is something that we have been repetitive about. If you've been part of these conversations, you have heard us say this 100 times, but we are really focusing on not duplicating our work, the work of the field, but rather amplifying and uplifting the work that has already been done. So Gabby talked a lot about field mapping and the conversations we had, and she has done the amazing work on the back end, all the lists that were shared in the chat on that. But I've also had the pleasure to be part of so many of these conversations with individuals, community leaders to organizational leaders. And I have even throughout these conversations come to my own personal realization that there is so much good work out there, like so much. And as a field, we are incredibly powerful. And I have even been learning things throughout these conversations with these community leaders and organizations. I'm like, I didn't even know this existed and this was out there. Like, it would be great if we could share this. So it has been really a personal, enlightening, and positive experience for me that like we are a force to be reckoned with. And it's important that everyone in this field, whether you've been in this field for a long time or you're just starting to dip your toes into this, that we create a space where all that work is being uplifted and it's being amplified and it's being easy to access. I am almost sure all of us are part of listservs where a lot of the content is asking for resources, asking for if anyone has an OER on this or tool and conferences on that. And it's just finding a way to streamline all of this, make it easier for everyone in the community, as well as those who are interested in becoming part of the community, to continue to produce the amazing work that is out there and not have to worry so much about the coordination, the dissemination, and the connecting with all of it. So another theme that emerged is to protect and preserve what we have built thus far. So like I said, there is so much great work, so many great structures, but also recognizing that our landscape is rapidly changing. Like I said earlier, when we applied for this grant originally back in September 2024, we are like in a completely different landscape than back then. So there are a lot of uncertainties about open education and you know, higher education in general. And this is really the time for us to, for lack of a better term, like mobilize and strengthen our community and like protect and preserve what we have and what we have created thus far so that we can be stronger and that we can continue the work that we do. And the last one is when doing all this research, we noticed a specific gap. And that specific gap was there is no membership out there that is tied specifically to the individual rather than an institution or an organization, meaning that there's not a specific open education professional association that you as an individual are a membership of that you can join, whether you work at an institution, whether you're retired and want to still be part of it, whether you're in a role that has nothing to do with open education, but you're just passionate about it and want to stay engaged in the community. And we've noticed that this is a very important gap to not only fill, but also to strengthen and coordinate our field. So we're really excited about this next phase of this work. And we recognize that there are probably a lot of questions about, well, what will the membership look like? When will this become official? What are you guys going to do and all that? So I am going to pass it over to steering committee member Joy to share a little bit about the membership model principles that we have set in place, but also to later we're going to talk about initial programming and what we'll be doing. So I'll pass it over to Joy.
Thanks, Aisha. I will move through quickly, just in light of time, but this is really exciting to be a part of this conversation and to get to share this information out with you all, especially because it's really the result of learning and hearing from all of you in the field. So this is sort of how we've arrived on these principles for our membership model. So as a steering committee, we thought deeply about membership, as Aisha had shared, and how to structure it in a way that honors the open values of our community and its history, and also that recognizes the need for sustainability and committed engagement of the field. So this means setting the expectation that members do contribute financially through membership dues. And while a lot of activities can be supported through grant funds, as an association, we need to think about how can we sustain this work for the future beyond any sort of grant, and really building that from day one. So the steering committee has discussed this idea extensively and considered how to approach it in ways that are, of course, consistent with all of our open values. And so the goal is to ensure that the association remains accessible to all who want to join, and contribute to the values and the goals, of course, of the association. So this includes offering a dues structure that accounts for different levels of financial circumstances, as well as scholarships to subsidize membership for those in need. And we recognize that much of the work of this association will benefit the field as a whole, regardless of whether individuals are members or not. And that is in and of itself what it means to be open. And that's important to honor and acknowledge. So it's a foundational principle that we will never actively enclose resources or restrict access, so that as much of the work is available to the public and with pathways for anyone to engage in the work. So we believe that there are many ways an association can offer value through things like participation in governance, committees, and programs as well through a membership, while still enabling and ensuring that the work is available to all. So just as we've done through this entire process, we want to provide pathways for the open ed community to help shape this membership model. These are like our initial ideas. So we invite you to participate in our working session focusing on membership structure. It will be held on Monday, August 11th. And I'm sure there will be more information with details coming out because we are committed to incorporating your feedback before we formally roll out any sort of membership. So that's my quick update on our collective plans for a membership structure. But again, we hope that you will join us for that working session so that as a community, we can help shape what this membership structure would look like. So I am going to pass it on over to Abby, who will talk about some of our initial programming that we have planned.
Hello, everybody. All right, my name is Abby Elder. I am the Open Access and Scholarly Communication Librarian at Iowa State University and the statewide Open Education Coordinator for Iowa. So I'll be talking about some of the initial programming that we plan to launch soon. So the survey that Nicole shared earlier identified 4 key areas where the field has the greatest need for additional support. Those are, of course, being able to find OER, complicated, as we've discussed in the chat, accessing tools and resources, responding to political and technological changes, more complicated now than before, and finding funding for open education work. So at our strategic planning meeting earlier this summer, we looked closely at the results of the survey and identified a set of preliminary activities to move ahead with right away. We wanted to see things that are first, things we can respond directly to immediately, things that are not duplicative of what other people are doing, and things that are feasible to roll out within the next 6 months to a year. So we started a little bit of work already. First, to address the needs for tools and resources, we've already begun building curated lists, again, already shared in the chat, that build on the feed map work that Gabby presented earlier. This includes the conferences list, webinar calendar, and opportunity board. One of the upcoming working sessions will focus on improving these lists and identifying others to build out that would be useful for the community. I should note that we're also including the support for finding OER in this category, since there could be lists or guides we could develop to assist with that, like finding the right repository to find the materials you need. Larger projects in this area may be longer term, but we really value your input on what is the most useful. Next, to address the needs for support in responding to political and technological changes, we plan to launch a webinar series. We envision this as a deliberate effort to bring in expertise and perspectives that are not already part of the community to share knowledge and strategies. So this will focus on topics identified through the survey, including the impact of policy on education funding, restrictions on academic freedom, and AI. Finally, to tackle funding, we have 2 things in the works. The first is a high-level guide addressing how to approach funding for open education. How do you apply for funding? How do you get grants? Which we could expand on in the future. The second is focused on reaching more people who have decision-making authority over funding, like policymakers, administrators, and others. The idea for the second thing is to develop a stipend program that will support community members to present on open education at strategically selected conferences where these decision makers will be, so we can get them thinking about open education as part of their everyday work. So we'll discuss all of these ideas in the upcoming working sessions, which are on our website and will be shared later, and I hope you consider joining. But before I hand it off to Rebecca to talk a little bit about future programming, I want to say a couple of words about my own perspective. Let me pull up my notes. What I really appreciate about this association is its focus on building a space for individuals to engage in and learn about open education together. Helping people who are alone or working in one corner of the community branch out and meet others, building more opportunities for educators and practitioners to engage meaningfully in discussions about open education beyond OER, and helping people who don't know what's available connect to the existing programs and orgs that we complement so they can engage with them too. I will now pass it along to steering committee member Rebecca.
Thank you so much, Abby. I'm Rebecca Karoff, and I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs in the University of Texas System. And I'm and I actually where I oversee a large variety of student success initiatives with our 13 institutions, health and academic. And I wanted to just take a little time to review with you some of the long-term programming the steering committee has talked about. And we won't get into too much detail on this today, since the future will really be shaped by how people engage, how you all engage as members. But we have identified some exciting ideas and want you to know what we've talked about. You can see them on the slides. I think for me and for others, one of the reasons an association can be so powerful is that it really can serve as a national voice for the field, for a field. And we see great potential for this association to engage in policy, advocacy, and communications work that helps expand national recognition of open education to support people who are doing this work at all levels. And this, as we've said, this will be in partnership with the many organizations who engage in this space. We also see potential for the association to guide outreach beyond the traditional boundaries of the open education field. For example, connecting more with the scholarship of teaching and learning community and organizations working to support the accessibility of digital resources. We can also be reaching out to other associations or societies to discuss alignment. And these are just some of the ideas we've had. I think there's a lot of other kind of higher education spaces that we can think about working with. An idea we all really liked was developing a mentorship program that can match those with experience to offer with those seeking support. And we talked about what kinds of investments we might make in creating missing pieces of infrastructure. And while we're not making any promises yet, here's the kind of bigger picture thinking an association could do. And before I hand it over to Amanda to say a word about the Open Education Conference, I'll do a little bit of what Abby just did and share some of my perspectives for why I belong and why I'm so pleased to be a part of the steering committee. I think this association can play an incredible backbone role, thinking about a collective impact change model. And so much of my work is at a system level. I'm always thinking about how do I amplify, elevate, and support the work of my institutions, that all the different kinds of practitioners, all the different kinds of people in offices, units working on student success challenges, open education really are included. And I think this organization has that opportunity to sort of strive towards scale. We've seen a lot of commentaries in the chat about how do we get to scale. There's a lot of us working hard. So many of you here are doing so much already. And we think there could be a larger, higher level coordination role that the association can play. And we're very excited about that. I also will just note that as a system level administrator, pretty high up, but not super high, well, however high up I am. But I wanted to say that in the survey results, you notice that there weren't a lot of administrators were not responding to this survey. And there can be many, many reasons for that. But I would like to see more higher level administrators engage much more deeply, not just giving some funding when they can, not just support. And we want their support, we want their money. We also want a deeper engagement from those kinds of voices, people in those kinds of roles, and have a much higher level of authority and accountability that I think can really benefit the entire field. Thank you, and let me pass it on to Amanda.
Thanks, Rebecca. Hi, everybody. I'm Amanda Larson. I'm the Erie Program Manager at The Ohio State University, and my role on the steering committee is to represent the Open Education Conference Board of Directors. As many of you know, in 2020, the Open Education Conference went through a transition to community leadership and has been administratively housed within SPARC for the last 6 years. The board has been engaging in discussions about sustainability, and the emergence of an association offers the opportunity for a strong alignment for the conference's future. The board has decided to appoint the Open Education Association Development Project as the administrative organizer of the conference. In short term, this isn't going to change anything from our day-to-day operations, since both projects are administered by the same team at SPARC. But as the association grows, it gives the conference a chance to be a part of shaping a long-term home while remaining accessible, in an accessible international event that welcomes everyone who shares the value of open education. Personally, I am very excited about this decision for many, many reasons, but I'm absolutely stoked that it allows for the continued community-centered leadership. Both organizations have prioritized participatory decision-making and providing opportunities for the community to be involved in doing the work to support open education. So this decision ensures that the community continues to get to shape open education while also providing a strengthened infrastructure for future stability and continuity for the conference, which has long been a cornerstone of open education work. Now I'll pass it back to Aisha.
Thank you so much, everyone. So I know I said in the beginning that we will have time for questions at the end, but turns out we love to talk, and we talked a lot. but no worries. I'm going to put a Padlet into the chat, and you are welcome to put any questions. There's questions, ideas, comments, and feedback in this Padlet. And we will be monitoring it over the next few weeks and we'll be responding to it. So that is a place to ask questions. But we also have these working sessions coming up, which is also a space to not only ask questions, but get involved and figure out probably a lot of the questions that you may have. So we have four coming up across the month of August. The first one is curated tools and resources, which is to talk about what type of tools and resources you would like to see us develop. The second is membership and pathway for engagement, and that is to talk about membership models, pricing structure, and then pathways for members to engage. And then the third is initial programming. So as Abby shared earlier about initial programming, that is a space for you all to contribute on exactly what that initial programming would look like. We talked about a webinar series, like what type of topics would you want? What type of speakers would you want to see us bring in? And then the last one is the one I'm personally most excited for is the branding and website. Help us choose what type of visuals we should have for this association, since it belongs to all of us as a community, and really help us build out the vision and help shape what this association will be. So I'm sorry that we didn't have time for questions, but like I said, we will be in the Padlet and answer any that you may have and leave any other comments, feedback, whatever the case may be that you have. And just really thank you all for the turnout and your participation up to this point. It's been really great working with the community and building this with so many voices and feedback and whatnot. So thank you all. Appreciate you so much.